We're going to move on to loss now. One of your textbooks this week defines loss as the separation from or removal of something meaningful to an individual. Again, I feel like this is such a special definition because it allows someone to give full honor and credit to whatever they've lost. Like trauma, loss is subjective. The greater the significance of something in our lives, the greater the loss we feel when it's gone. So last week, the resource that I mentioned to y'all was the book called Voice of the Heart by Dr. Chip Dodd. Like I said, it is an absolutely excellent book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. One of the correlations that Dr. Dodd makes in the book is between sadness and loss. In the book, he discusses that sadness is the emotion that we feel when we experience loss. And the greater the loss, the greater amount of sadness that we're going to experience. His actual definition of sadness is the feeling that we've been given to allow ourselves to care. It's the feeling that we have when we lose something that we care about or are attached to. The more that you care, the more sadness that you will feel. You have to be good at sadness in order to care. In the book, Dr. Dodd's book, each emotion is split up into 3 parts. The true emotion, which would be sadness in this case, which I defined above, as well as the impairment of each emotion and the gift of each emotion. Dr. Dodd states that when we attempt to make someone else do our sadness work for us or grieve for us, what it actually turns into is self-pity. Self-pity, as defined by Dr. Dodd, puts demands on others. That person would use manipulation, which actually results in isolation. Now, this might sound a little bit like we're deviating from what we were just talking about, but I wanted to throw in there a quick bit about the typical grieving process. Most clinicians and research would suggest that there are about 5 steps to the grieving process. The first step is denial. Things really aren't that bad. Or we're maybe denying that something happened, denying the truth of the situation, or using defense mechanisms. The second step is anger. Perhaps you're angry at God. Maybe you're angry at yourself. Maybe you're angry at other people. Depression. This could look like anger turned inwards, or depression in the clinical sense of loss of energy, basic functions, relational impairment, etc. The fourth step in the grieving process is bargaining. So that might look like making deals with others or God. If you would just do this, then I will do this. And the last step in the grieving process is acceptance. Acceptance is that place that you arrive in which the event or the events that precipitated the grieving process are no longer impairing your daily living. See, acceptance is the desired outcome of the grieving process. And interestingly enough, acceptance is the gift that we receive when we're willing to process through our sadness. Through this willingness to see, to feel, to need, to desire and hope, we get acceptance. Dr. Dodd states that acceptance means that things aren't okay, and that's okay. Acceptance doesn't mean that things are okay. It means that it's okay to feel fully. It's not okay if somebody that you love dies from cancer. It's okay to feel sad in that moment. I love this correlation between the need to grieve and fully experience our loss in an effort to walk towards acceptance. As y'all can tell, I am kind of interchanging the subjects of grief and loss throughout this portion of the lecture. And the reason for that is because I feel like the two go hand in hand. Grief is not necessary if loss is not present. Loss doesn't disappear or really even dissipate without the grieving process in a healthy way. Of course, we can try to stuff those losses, or we can stuff the grieving process or stunt it by not dealing with it. However, I tend to believe that this method of grieving your loss leads only to becoming more broken, isolated, and apathetic.